Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our little talk on supercharging Drupal with GovCMS and Salesforce. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Robin Leonard. I'm partner at Xenai Digital. We're a Salesforce consulting partner. We've been operating for about 13 years and we're partnering together with Icon.
And my first point of notice is I've spelt Xenai's name wrong on the slide, so good start. I'm Chris Dodds. I'm one of the co-founders of Icon. Icon's a little bit different to a lot of the agencies here, and I do get a little intimidated, even though I'm a head of digital. I'm not a developer, and we're not just a pure web shop. We do a lot of different things, including communications and PR and behaviour change, crisis management, brand, the whole lot. But I guess the big thing that we consider with all of the projects we work on is around communication, and I think that's kind of how we classify ourselves as a communication agency. And one of the core tenets of communication is around the experience design, whether that's visual or physical or from a communications point of view, copywriting and the like. So what we're keen to talk about here is what would a user experience be if content was based on citizen profiles, preferences and viewing history. And this is kind of the beauty of what Salesforce can bring to Drupal. Understanding that there's and I've heard quite a bit of talk at this conference already around personalisation, and certainly things around the DXP panel with the DTA, and certainly content as an API that's being worked on. There's lots of talk about how we personalise. It's a big effort. From a technology point of view, it's maybe not as difficult as it is from considering what that user needs and creating content that is going to be specific for their needs. But hopefully we're going to show that the technology layer of this is actually relatively straightforward to do. So I wanted to give a bit of a case study. This is the Department of Defence's website. Icon did a 2-year project where we did a content strategy. We reviewed around 130 websites, including information architecture. We did a design system and a component library, and then the GovCMS team at Defence took that on and they built a site, and it's now applied across the whole Defence estate. We love this website, but it is a classic website that we'd all be familiar with from a structural point of view and a content point of view. So what I want to imagine is a user, let's call her Jess, who is visiting the Defence website and other sites. We know that Jess has visited Defence. She spent a lot of time on the Navy website. She's subscribed to a Navy newsletter. She's viewed a bunch of job opportunities and has come back to a couple of those a few times and taken a look. She's searched for particular information on how to apply, and she's read application pages. She's viewed some local events in Melbourne around recruitment events. And as a point of interest, she's actually read a bunch of articles on the history of the Department of Defence and Navy. So all of these little interaction points are data points that in the ether would just go off. We would never notice them. Maybe you pick them up in Google Analytics, but with Salesforce you can start to track this type of data. You can then bring these interaction points into Salesforce as you build out a profile of Jess, and then you can use what we know she's interested in to then feed content, whether that's personalised content on a website. Maybe she is subscribed or she's talking to someone over email, and so we want to be able to capture that and send specific information to her in email. Maybe she has put her mobile number in there and is given permission to be communicated via mobile or WhatsApp, and so we can start sending messages to her. We can customise and send messages based on the information, the interactions, and the points that she's given permission. One of the things, we were just talking about this earlier, that we're keen to highlight is, I think everyone here works in tech, and so we understand, unless you've got a blocker on, everything that we do on the web is tracked. All of us have profiles. Mostly those profiles are used for selling our data to other companies. So our profile is sold for profit, or it's trying to sell us something that we've looked at once on Instagram and we keep getting that stupid ad again and again. In this instance, it's a far more ethical approach. Maybe you could talk a bit about how Salesforce handles data?
Yeah, so Salesforce does have local data storage in Australia. So it's been IRAPed, it's gone through all the government approvals, and it's a preferred platform for first-party data for citizens in Australia. So it's very secure, it's got all of the governance required, and they've got a very strong approach to data security and preventing data breach. I think we often think of this data as just web data, but it's really first-party data. And even if it's anonymized, it's still important data that you can leverage if you store it and use it correctly.
And I think especially for government, it's really important if you're building a service that utilises this type of technology, you're being discreet and ethical around what it is. What are we collecting and why are we collecting it? Yeah, so it's a very specific need. Someone has opted in to subscribing to a newsletter or subscribing via text or whatever. What we want to do is use that information in an ethical way and be quite transparent about that to improve the user experience, not to sell them something, not to change something about them. So back to the Defence website. And again, this is a beautiful project, and it's one of the most that I'm really proud of the job the team did. But it's a classic website. When you do a screen grab of what the front page looks like, it's a tomb. We'll be familiar with this. It has a universal navigation. It has hero banners with some sliders on it with links. There are some common clicks. So when you do your user research, right, these are the 5 things we know people look for consistently on this website. So we'll list those out. It's got a news section that can be filtered manually, but it's unfiltered to start. We have images because we want to kind of sell our brand. There's some general content that we know people look at regularly, so we want to surface that. There's a career section because we know people look for jobs. There's some more general content and there's universal footer. It's common, yeah? It works for the moment, but it can be done better. Because, especially on mobile, the amount of effort that it's going to take doing this doom scrolling to find the information we're after is going to be quite excessive. So this is where Salesforce and Drupal, and I kind of like the fact that Salesforce has a Drupal rain coming out of it. It kind of works together as partners. Someone else commented in the last one I was at, it was a junior developer, commented that I've now realised that the Drupal logo is actually a tear. I'm crying as I'm starting to use this platform. So let's imagine if we're linking these two together and we have all of this information, what is a web experience for Jess going to be? So it could be customised navigation. So we know the things that she's looked at regularly or that she hasn't looked at all. So maybe we can reduce the volume of navigation that is in primary, that's more specific about what we know she's looking for, so that when she comes back again, she's going to see something that's a little more familiar. We know that she's been interested in a career in the Navy, so at some point we could trigger a pop-up that's contextual, that talks about download your how to apply career guide. We know she's interested in it, she may not have looked at it already, so let's prompt her to go and download it. We can have a personalised banner that is based on previous experiences, so rather than this 5 common quick call to actions that are universal based on thousands of users that have been tested, this one's very specific. We want to help her prepare her application for Navy. We know she's interested in events in Melbourne, so we can highlight that they're coming up. And we know she's read a lot about defence history. Maybe she's doing a postgrad at Melbourne Uni and she's a historian and thinking that she wants to go. So let's give her some more of the information that we know she's really interested in. And those fast start buttons can be personalised specifically to her needs again. News can be based on topics that we know she's interested in, that she's read, so we can feed her more of those, with some random ones thrown in as well. We don't want an echo chamber. And then jobs that are specific to the things she's been searching for can be listed. And then we could also potentially have an agentic AI chatbot, which Robin's going to talk a bit about later. So what we've gone from is the classic long scroll capture everything website to something that's far more condensed, far more experience driven and specific to Jess. This is her website. So Robin's now going to talk at a little bit more length about some of the functionality that Salesforce can bring when it's linked into Drupal and GovCMS.
Yeah, great. And we see this as a perfect partnership. Salesforce doesn't have a strong CMS play at all. So they do have a CMS product, but it actually does integrate with other CMSs, so you don't need to replicate the same information. Salesforce, I'm sure everyone's relatively aware, but can I get a hands up of everyone that has some familiarity with Salesforce? Great. Okay. So for those that don't know about Salesforce, Salesforce is a CRM platform. It's really, it's born out of the private sector for sales, service, marketing. Usually everything that touches a customer, Salesforce cares about. So as we get people that go through an experience, they may submit a form. We can then trigger a journey off the back of the form. So web and journey triggers are very common ways to use a CMS and Salesforce together. A/B testing, you guys would all be familiar with what that is, but you can A/B test not only the web experience, but also, say, a journey. So you can test a different email content based on, you could random split, or you could even use AI to A/B test different scenarios. AI decisioning, as I just mentioned, AI is a huge part of the Salesforce platform. They've made a big investment into artificial intelligence. So decisioning around who gets what content, who gets put on which journey, it's all in the platform. They've got they call it Einstein as their AI engine. It's not an LLM. They actually plug into other LLMs. So you can plug into Claude or OpenAI or other LLM, so they've got to bring your own LLM model. But they've got a huge investment into AI, and that's really seen as the future of Salesforce moving forward. It's really also just great to have the website and CRM tightly coupled. Because you've got this web data, we just talked about your first-party database, but you've got all of this dark data. And we consider the web data, that engagement data, as like the peak of the iceberg. But you've got all of this other data underlying. So, your first-party data is like the peak of the iceberg. We see the customer records, but we don't see all of their engagement. So if we can bring that together, we actually have a lot more data to then provide to AI to make those decisions, or to just have more context around what that human is going through. And then we can activate content across all sorts of channels. So email, SMS, WhatsApp, mobile push. Those are just a few. We can also target on advertising if there's ads being paid for on Facebook or Meta. There's iMessage on your iPhone. All of these channels, either messaging or digital marketing, we can then automate those channels based on what's going on the website. And it's almost like a flywheel, and that they're coming to the website, they're interacting with it, and we're capturing that information to then personalize the experience. Journey orchestration, so we can also orchestrate journeys across multiple different channels depending on which preference the person has. So if they don't typically engage on email, we can send them an SMS. Or if they're not engaging on any of those channels, we can send them an ad. Or if they've got the mobile app, we can send them a push message. So it really allows us to orchestrate multi-step journeys with conditions and criteria across all the channels that you need to. And I like to think of Salesforce as kind of like a robot, and you give it a job to do. You build a journey and you give it that job to do, and it moves its arm like that for you. But you can actually build unlimited journeys with it. So you've got this robot that's just performing all of this work for the organization, and it's ultimately scalable. So that's really the way of seeing it as a communications robot, I guess, with some AI logic. And across all of the channels that you do communicate with your stakeholder, you can personalize that. So you can say, "Hi Jess, thank you for your application to the Navy." And you're just using the first-party data that you've collected from them that's sitting in your database to do that personalization. By personalizing, you actually get a much better engagement rate from the end user. So they're more likely to respond if you're using their first name or if you know a bit about them, rather than generic messaging. And going back to ethical personalization, I think that's really the key, is we're not just spamming people with generic messages that don't consider their personal needs and preferences. We're using the information they've given us to give them a personalized one-to-one experience. Yep. So The way we like to do design is really thinking about it from a life cycle perspective. I'm sure this is not new information to anyone, but usually we look at the overall life cycle from consideration all the way to maybe referral or advocacy or exit. So in Jess's case, she's considering a role with the Navy. She may apply for a role. Eventually she'll join, hopefully. She'll do her time, she'll serve, and then she may refer other people to join up. So we want to make sure that she's supported throughout that journey. And on the top here, we've got how the web plays a role in that. So if we're thinking about the consideration stage, she's got to find the website firstly, so it's got to rank and be findable. You'd probably have a blog, maybe a chatbot where she can start to engage with questions. She would maybe fill in a web form during that consideration phase, maybe an inquiry form. She may register for events, and she may download collateral. And then all the way through, I won't go through all of these in detail, but you can see there's an evolution. In the application stage, she may submit an application form. In the join phase, we may send her an onboarding form to capture more information so that she doesn't have to fill out paper forms when she joins. When she's serving, maybe she'll fill out a support form. So maybe she's got a complaint or she's got an internal IT request. So she may use the web to fill out a form to get that request fulfilled. Maybe there's a login for her. So every Navy employee, if that's what you call them, they may have a login portal where they can go and get support or get information relevant for them. So all the way through this life cycle, there is always going to be a web experience. Where Salesforce enriches that is through the other channels. So, as they're going through the consideration stages, maybe we'd have advertising to them on social, or maybe during the application phase, we would have emails back and forth between the candidate, or maybe an SMS reminder, you've got a job interview today. Maybe there's a contract that she would need to sign, and we can store that in Salesforce and know the status of that signature. As they join, maybe she would have a mobile app for Navy staff, and through that we could send her push notifications. You're supposed to be at this Navy base on this time. So these are transactional messages that help her through her experience, and just make sure that she doesn't have to call her kind of managing officer. I don't know the terms here for Navy, private citizen here. But yeah, and that's where we see a lot of the benefit for the government is actually automating the experience of these people as they go through, because it's a lot less cost to have someone that is picking up the phone and talking to them or remembering to call them, or maybe one Navy person would have a slightly different experience to another because they just fell through the cracks. So we can automate that experience with Salesforce, we can automate the front-end experience with Drupal, and if we put them all together, we can orchestrate the experience across all digital touchpoints. The architecture to achieve this is extremely simple. So Salesforce it's a big platform and there's a lot of products behind it, but we've made it one bubble for the purpose of this. But with Salesforce, at the top you'll see in blue all of the web aspects of Salesforce. So we've got obviously Drupal driving the website, the CMS. We may also have a web login, which Salesforce can provide the web login experience. Drupal can also provide the web login experience. And we may SSO between them, so there's one login regardless of which site you're using, and it can look and feel like the same experience. We can embed personalisation, and the personalisation is really embedding an SDK in the Drupal website, and then putting content blocks on the website that we then put personalised content. So we would say, here is, if we know they're male or if we know they're female, show them this block versus this block. And there is some level of AI to automate that decisioning as well. It may be also that we drive pop-ups, and these are Salesforce pop-ups that are embedded on the Drupal site. So it effectively feels like you're just on the Drupal site, but you're receiving a pop-up. I know pop-ups are not new technology, but to be able to drive a pop-up based on your first-party data, that's quite an interesting concept. So if I know they're male or female and they've been browsing for a minute and they're about to exit, I can present them a pop-up. Web forms, that's a no-brainer. Obviously, that's an easy integration into Salesforce. So if I'm submitting an application form, goes into an application queue, notifies a recruiter. The recruiter would then work on that, and it forms the business process for recruitment. And the chatbot, obviously, which I'll talk about in a bit, but this is a very exciting development of Salesforce. They've had chatbots for a long time. Now they've got agentic AI chatbots. And then outside of that, we've talked about the other channels, but these are all the channels outside of the web experience which you might like to use Salesforce for. And remembering that Salesforce is already used by many governments. So it's already there, it's already their CRM platform, but how can we get Drupal and Salesforce to play nicely together? And in this case, it's a perfect fit, and you never need to look at any other DXP solution. So the agentic experience, hands up who's heard of Agentforce? We've got a few here. Okay, just a few. Okay, so you guys aren't on the Salesforce algorithm. Salesforce have announced, it was only September last year, they went live with Agentforce, and it's basically their LLM approach to their CRM platform. So it's really a chatbot powered by LLMs. So think ChatGPT, but it's talking to your CRM data. So they've very securely got a connection between the CRM database, so the first name, last name, address, phone number, email, application status, recruitment status, all of the information that they know about the person. I can chat, I can authenticate, so it can ask me the same questions a phone operator would ask to say, what's your date of birth, what's your name, what's your secret password? And then if they authenticate, it can then provide them updates. Oh, this is your application status. And maybe the person is like, oh, I can't make my interview. Can we reschedule it? The chatbot can go, okay, sure, I'll do that for you right now. So it really allows a human-like chat to operate autonomously without a human behind it. And of course, you always can hand over to a human. So there's always someone ready to pick up the chat if the human on the other end is like, you don't understand me, I need to speak to a human. And if you think about it from Jess's perspective, she's got very specific questions that she probably has before joining the Navy. And they may be oriented to her gender, they may be oriented to her specific circumstances. And maybe she'd feel more comfortable asking those questions to a chatbot than she would be to a human. So this allows us to have those kind of conversations where she can ask those questions. Are there many other women? What are the sleeping arrangements for women? How long would I have to serve? Anything she needs to ask, she can ask without fear of judgment through the chatbot. Just like going through Woolies, I have no fear of judgment if I buy something that's maybe a bit, risky. So not that I do.
There was some interesting research that I was reading recently, and it was looking at engagement rates for people who were being surveyed over a phone, between being surveyed by a human and being surveyed by an AI. And the AI, which would announce itself on the call, hello, I'm an artificial intelligence, I've got some questions, would you mind answering? The hit rate for people staying on that call was like 500% higher than it was for a person, through curiosity and novelty, yeah? So it's actually quite interesting.
And it's just the start. This has just come out, so this is really new. We've all been playing with OpenAI, ChatGPT, so we know intuitively what the power is, but if you pair that power with CRM data and you do it in a very secure fashion that considers ethical use of that data and data security, it's a really powerful combination, and it's available today. So, yeah.
Great. All right, so wrap up, just 6 quick reasons for why we think Drupal and Salesforce is a powerful combination. As we said, it's a more relevant user experience. Content is being developed and delivered based on a person's unique needs and history. That's going to contribute to better accessibility and inclusivity, which is some of the core tenets behind the digital service standard. It's going to lift brand identity and differentiation when we know that people want frictionless experiences on the web, and the better experience we can give them, the higher they're going to rank that organisation in regards to usefulness, professionalism, ease of use. That's going to benefit your brand. These sorts of technologies are also allowing you to adapt to new goals and trends. So while Drupal is developing, to actually couple it into Salesforce gives you another kind of superpower. For the user, which again we're always going to come back to, it's going to support them in making informed decision making. They're going to have all of the information they need to make a decision based on the information that we know that they need. And then I think one of the biggest ones is around maintaining longevity of existing websites. So as an ecosystem, there's a lot of organisations, private, educational, not-for-profit, government, that have invested in Drupal as a solution. I like to think that in partnering with other types of technologies, it's going to, from a customer point of view, give you more longevity on your website. As the web changes very rapidly, we as creators need to ensure that our clients are getting the best value for money from their existing website. So don't rebuild it from scratch using an entirely new DXP. Use what you've got now, but just personalise it based on pushing Salesforce into it. So that's it. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions. We've got a few minutes. Yeah.
People like consistency. People like consistency. They use the memory to convert where function is.
Yes.
Is the entire website personalized, or do you allow for more corrective content?
It's very much targeted, yeah. So it could be 95% of the website is similar for everyone. It's the same experience, but there are specific parts that we think are appropriate for that user that we're going to personalise just for them. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. You don't want to have a different interface every single time you come in. That would be jarring. Yeah, but yeah.
And it's also a journey as well. So when you first start to personalise, you don't personalise the whole thing at one big bang. You'd personalise the areas where you see the most benefit in personalising. So you'd prioritise. Over time, it would become more personalised, but I think statistically, you'd look at conversion rates as your metric for personalisation. It's like, how clicked is this link, or how many forms are converted? And that way you could decide on what to personalize based on conversion rates. Yeah, good question. Any other questions?
Are we using sessions for this one, like to store user data?
Sessions? In what sense? Neither of us have a development background. So.
We saw that when a user registers on the website, so you are storing data in sessions and then providing that to Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce is basically returning you similar kind of tags or keywords by which you can show that personal impact, right? Mm-hmm. For the user.
Are you speaking about cookies?
Yeah.
So it's cookieless. So Salesforce personalization is using cookieless. I think it's Java-side script, something like that. But it pulls in the data and stores it in Salesforce. So we've actually got all of the history of all of the engagement data. Yeah, but it's stored. Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying, what about those applications where user cannot log in?
Where they can't log in, yeah. Well,
yeah.
What's the process of personalising?
So we store, if I understand correctly, we store unknown data and then known data. So once they log in or so we store that on our side. So we've got all of that data. Once they do log in, we tie it to the known user, and then it enriches the first-party data.
So do we consent the user about the security and integrity that we are storing their data?
Yeah, that's really important. So yeah, you do have to have that kind of pop-up to say, do I consent? And also in your privacy policy, you'd want to make sure you have the right terms.
And I have another question, this large language models and AI stuff, if we integrate the same thing with the Drupal, and this Drupal is all about how tags work and the categories work, and the user is visiting a particular website. They suppose I'm on a news page, I'm reading about a particular news, it's related to a particular category, and that category can also be stored in Drupal itself. And if I integrate the same model within Drupal, I can provide them that same personalized concept, right?
That's right, yeah. So
that's what Salesforce is doing.
Salesforce does it also. My understanding is Drupal does have some personalization
does,
capability as well. I think that's probably more on the engagement data as opposed to Salesforce, which is more based on the first-party data. So if I know that they're male or female in my CRM, or if I know that they've got an application in or a complaint, I can personalize based on that. I think Drupal, you'd probably typically say, if I know they're in New South Wales, because the browser tells me that, then I can personalize there. So maybe a difference in how you'd apply them.
And sorry, we're getting a wind up here. Yeah, sorry, just very quickly. Yeah, very quickly.
So I'm saying in terms of like, if I implement any OpenAI model, the Drupal itself, it can provide me with the same semantic kind of keywords that I can use to implement the same thing. That's what Salesforce is doing, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm not. Yeah, yes. I'm not sure if I understand the question.
We can talk more. That'd be great. But thank you everyone for your interest and for
Thank
coming.
you.
I hope it was useful. Thank you.